everybody. I am so pleased to be here with you. I like to think I'm there in person. And just one small clarification on that lovely introduction. I'm actually not in New York at the moment. I'm in Toronto visiting with my father in his assisted living. So if you, apologies if you see somebody walking around behind me, I appreciate the understanding of that. But wanted to start off by saying a huge thank you for inviting me to join this important meeting. I think it's incredible that you are having this conversation, and would like to echo the congratulations to the entire team there on the strategic plan that's been developed. It's clear it has brought in a lot of what I'm hopefully going to be sharing with you today about children's participation and why it's so important. So I would give you a little bit of an outline of the talk that I'm going to share with you today, including a definition of children's participation, looking a little bit at why it's important for children, for organizations, and why it's challenged, and then looking at that within child rights programming. Our colleague from UNICEF was talking extensively, very helpfully in terms of the importance of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And when it comes to children's participation as well, it's where does that fit within the child rights programming and the foundation of what we're here to talk about today. And I think I just lost the webcam. Can you still hear me?
Yep. Yes. Keep going, Sarah.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And what does this mean in principle? So for all of us, what does this mean? So the first thing I want to look at is the definition of children's participation. And the one that I keep going back to, and I admit, worked at Save the Children for years, but children's participation is about children having the opportunity to express a view, to influence decision making, and to achieve change. And if you look at the strategic plan that you've all developed, there's a lot of that you can see within there. It's also the informed and willing involvement of all children, including the most marginalized, those of different ages and abilities in matters that concern them. So it's about bringing together many different components that ensure that children themselves are part of the realization of the rights that we were hearing about earlier today. So that comes back to Article 12 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which for the first time said that children globally have that right to participate in decisions that affect them. It's based on their evolving capacities. There's lots of added pieces to this puzzle, but it comes down to children themselves having the right to participate in decisions that affect them. So why do we do this? Because it's a right, but it's also a little bit self-serving in that children's participation helps us as organizations to ensure that planning and design of programs is more relevant to the needs and rights of children, which leads, therefore, to more effective and accountable programming. So children's participation helps us do our jobs better. It makes sure that what we are doing is meeting the needs and realizing the rights of those children that we're working with. But it's not just about us, it's also about the children themselves. And the benefits to them are contributing to their personal development, about offering children the opportunity to create positive changes in their communities. It can lead to their increased empowerment. Someone asked me what I think, I feel better about myself. It protects children. With a greater awareness of their rights, children and young people are more likely to voice their concerns. So we are doing a lot of work right now on how do we support children within their own, children's participation within their own protection in a way that is safe, but also in a way that realizes their rights. It also promotes children's capacity for civic engagement, tolerance, and respect for others. And it can help children receive better targeted and more relevant programs. So the next slide, this figure 1, is looking at child rights programming cycle. And I know that Andrew is going to speak more to this later today, so I'm not going to focus a lot on this slide, except to say this is that circle that takes us through what do we need to have in place to see a rights-based approach to programming. And it starts with understanding and awareness of the human rights principles and childhood. It goes on to talk about analysis and a CRSA, or a child rights situational approach. It looks at planning, implementation, monitoring, evaluation, learning and feedback, and external influence, advocacy, and feedback. And it's a loop, because we're constantly having to check in on ourselves to see where are we at? Are we doing the right thing? And it's an opportunity for us to consistently be questioning ourselves, but not just ourselves, our partners, the children and young people that we're working with, and others. And to do this, there's a couple of things that you need to have in place to make sure that you're doing it in a way that involves children, because children need to be involved in every step of this process. And I'll start with the understanding and awareness of human rights. And this is where we look at children's evolving capacities and their ability to act on their own behalf. So for example, there are different ways of involving older and younger children depending on their levels of understanding and their abilities to participate. And it's up to us to make sure that we are meeting that need, that we are reflecting and understanding of children's evolving capacities. If you look at the analysis, or the child rights situational approach, it's about thinking about the program environment and identifying the barriers that children themselves may experience when it comes to speaking out or their voices being heard. What are those considerations that we need to be putting in place before we start to engage children and young people? Number 3, planning, is about creating space and opportunity for children's views to influence programs and design. What is it that they want to see happen? Number 4, implementation, is about creating space and opportunity for children's voices to be heard within their families, their communities, their schools, and beyond. It's about building children's confidence, their knowledge of their rights, and their ability to protect themselves. It's about giving children themselves the opportunity to learn and practice important life skills, and to empower children as members of civil society and as active and responsible citizens. Number 5, monitoring and evaluation, is about using clear indicators to measure the extent of children's participation, and the creation of spaces and mechanisms for their views to be taken into account in decision making. And number 6 is about being accountable to children through feedback. Now I'm going to come back to the analysis stage again. Number 2, child rights situational analysis. Because children's participation in this program cycle, we know it's going to be more meaningful when they're involved at the earliest stage, including the analysis stage. And this enables them to more effectively influence strategic planning and the design of programs that can improve their situations and their environment. So it's about involving them early. In the design phase, children and young people can be involved in developing relevant objectives and indicators that show change in their daily life and the realization of their rights. When children are familiar with the project, objectives and indicators, and have been actively being the key word, involved in the planning process, they can play a more meaningful role in number 3, planning and implementation, and monitoring and evaluation, and external influencing, advocacy, and feedback. So it's only by involving them at the early stages in a meaningful way that we're going to make sure that they're engaged throughout this entire process. So key processes are about involving children at every stage of the cycle, but it's also about working with the most vulnerable children and taking steps to counter discrimination. There's discrimination in every country in the world, in every community, in every society. And we need to be taking steps to counter that when we're engaging with children and young people. But looking back to the Convention on the Rights of the Child, it's also about creating a rights climate. And that's done by redressing power relations in favor of children and their rights. This is about their rights. But there's also different types of children's participation. There are consultations that happen. There's collaboration that we do together. And then there are child-led examples. As it was mentioned, I was seconded recently to the Global Partnership to End Violence Against Children. And as part of that process, to develop our strategy, we undertook consultations with over 1,500 children and young people in 24 countries. And we did that because we wanted to ensure that the document that we produce is reflective of what the children and young people are saying. But we now have that obligation to be responding to what the children and young people said. Years ago, when we were doing work in South Asia, and we went back to consult with some children and young people, and they said to us, "You've consulted with us enough. It's time to act on what we've said." And I think a lot of times as organizations and as people who want to make sure that we're engaging children and young people, our go-to is to consult with them. And that has to happen. But then we look at another level of engagement, and that's about collaboration. And that's where are those spaces where we can work together, adults and children, children and adults, young people, youth. What is the role and the space for all of us to collectively be collaborating, supportive, sometimes challenging, questioning, but where is that space for us to come together in collaboration? And then another form of engagement is those where it's child or youth led, and adults are standing behind supportive, but we're not directing this. This is theirs. They own it. Children themselves are running with it and are taking complete control. So it's for consideration. It's something that I think, as a person who's been working on and supporting the engagement of children and young people, it's a constant reminder to myself of consultations have a purpose. They need to be done. We need to make sure that we're responsive to children, but we also need to be collaborating with them. And we need to be supporting their own initiatives and their own child-led programs. So there's a number of pieces to this puzzle that I think all of us are going to be struggling with. And as we look to the Sustainable Development Goals and coming together to 2030, it's up to all of us, children, young people, organizations, individuals, and governments, to be working in consultation, in collaboration, and in support of child-led organizations to see this turned into a reality. So thank you very much. Have to say it's an honor to be with all of you today, and happy to answer any questions or conversations that you'd like to have. So thank you.